During my relatively short time on this planet, I have come across some really interesting ways of hurting yourself. I have never really had any serious trauma or loss of blood or broken bones or anything to that effect, but I have been hurt in probably some of the dumbest ways. And not only have I been hurt in some of the dumbest ways, I've also caused injury in some of the dumbest ways. I'm not a malicious person. I never intended to hurt anybody, but life finds a way to cause pain. My earliest memory of hurting somebody else, I was maybe 7 or 8, and my sister at the time was about 2, and we were playing in the bedroom in the back of the house, doing goofy things, and for some reason, I had the audacity and the wild urge to grab her by her ankles and swing her around in a circle, allowing the centrifugal force to flatten her out so that her head is out and she's basically flat, and she's like I'm Saturn and she's the rings, I guess, is the best example I can give of it. But sure enough, I grabbed my sister by her ankles and I swung her around, and of course, as you can expect, I was unable to hold her adequately, and she wound up flying and landing in the toy box. We had a big old toy chest that was huge to me. I could get in it, but yeah, she wound up. I dunked her like a basketball. She went right in the toy box, and toys flew everywhere. My sister was not exactly the happiest at the fact that this had occurred, but it didn't get any better from there. We wound up having to actually go to the hospital because of my sister being injured due to my negligence. I say that as if I, was just not caring and she wound up getting hurt. But the first time that we actually had to go to the hospital in my memory was we had just finished watching Finding Nemo for the first time on DVD. And I was sitting next to a vent in the floor because we were living in a single wide trailer at the time. And the air conditioning vents were in the floor to distribute the cold air, the hot air throughout the house. And they weren't in the ceiling like most houses have them. It's just the design of the trailer, and they were kind of fun as a kid. You could drop crayons and things down them and watch the wax melt whenever it's wintertime and there's heat going through the vents, or you could drop coins down there and now you've got coins stuck in the ventilation underneath the floor. It was fascinating as a child, but my sister was bumbling around, not really able to walk very well, and she wound up falling over my lap, and I had my knees up at the time. And whenever she came down on my knees, I had, first of all, just this instinctive urge to pick her up off of me. But for some reason, I went with the lay my legs flat option so that she would roll off naturally. That's what I was thinking. But whenever I dropped my legs, rather than her rolling off, her chin hit the air conditioner vent that I was sitting next to, and chipped her 2 front teeth. So off to the hospital we went for that. Yeah, wonderful big brother that I was. Um, First major injury I could think of that I had was actually I was playing baseball, and we were out at practice, and all my teammates were out there, and we just finished throwing the ball around the diamond, and we were going back to the dugout. It's what we called the little pen that we're keeping our baseball bags in, where our bench was, where we were sitting waiting for our turn to go out onto the field. And we were all running back to the dugout, and I was, of course, running the fastest, and I was preceding the pack. And I stumbled over third base. For whatever reason, I decided that I needed to run past third base. And it's a raised bag. It's not like it's flat on the ground. It's a bump. It's an obstruction. It's an obstacle. And I tripped over that. Now, the distance from third base to the dugout is, I mean, I don't know how long it actually was, but for me to have tripped all over third base and to have continued to lose my balance and to stumble and trip and fall the entire distance to the supporting column of the dugout cage had to look like something out of Looney Tunes, because I had to be tripping and stumbling and falling over myself for about 10 minutes before I finally wound up impacting that column. Hit me right there. That was the first thing that hit, was my chin. And I slid down it like, you see the Wile E. Coyote comes running and he hits the window and he very slowly slides down. I slowly slid down that column, bleeding profusely from my lower lip and gum. And I was fine, it was that point in my life where it was like, rub some dirt on it and you'll be okay kind of a thing. And so I was a little upset about it, but I walked up into the dugout pretending like nothing had happened, as if I had not just tripped and stumbled for 5 or 6 miles to find a resting place right up against that column. Probably the next injury that I can think of that happened was to my father. My father was walking down the stairway out of our trailer and going to do something in the yard, and he stepped wrong on like the second or third step, and he wound up falling and breaking his ankle. And so we hopped him in the minivan, and my mother drove us to the hospital to get him looked at. And so my dad, we got to the emergency room, because that was where we pulled up to. My mom was thinking we needed to go to the emergency room. The doctors brought out a wheelchair, and my dad hopped in the wheelchair and off they went. And I had opened the sliding door on this minivan to do something, maybe to say goodbye to Dad, I don't know. But I closed it back without taking my hand out of the doorframe. And so I slammed my own hand in the minivan's doorframe, and I wound up breaking these 3 fingers. So we had a dad with a broken ankle and me with not broken, like completely shattered, but dislocated and swollen and bruised fingers. That was a lovely day. It was fantastic. About a couple years later, I'm still playing baseball at the time, and I was just throwing the ball with my dad in the yard. My sister came out and she wanted to throw the ball too, so she got her baseball glove and she went over there, and my dad threw the ball to her, and then he throw it to me, and then he'd throw it to her, and throw it to me, and then he threw it to her, she threw it back to him, and he threw it to me. Perfectly normal throw, nothing unique about it. We've been doing this for half an hour. There was absolutely no reason for me to suddenly just completely freeze and forget what I was doing and forget how to raise my glove. And that thing drilled me in my left eye socket so hard that it knocked me completely out. And the next thing I remember, I was sitting on our front porch. I had a bottle of Gatorade in my hand. My dad was holding a Ziploc bag full of ice up against my head, harder than I thought he really should have been. And wound up going to the hospital and having an x-ray done, and sure enough, my eye socket was cracked from there all the way up to about right there. Right about there. My head swelled up like a football. I looked absolutely ridiculous. That was, it was disturbing to look at myself in the mirror and see that this entire side of my face was purple. And all because I just didn't raise my glove, I didn't move, completely forgot what I was doing, and here I am looking like Two-Face from Batman. Obviously my dad was completely crushed about it. He just wanted to throw the ball with his kids. I feel so bad because, I mean, I can't imagine being my dad and seeing that happen, and I hope to God he didn't have any guilt, feeling guilty about doing it, because it was just me being brain dead for some reason, just completely stopping doing what we were doing this whole time. Definitely was in no way his fault. But later on in life, next injury that happened that was absolutely stupid and should not have happened was me skateboarding down aisle 12 in the supermarket that I worked for as the stock boy. I spoke about that in a previous video. For some stupid reason, I brought my skateboard to work, and we were stocking overnight. We were not going to do that while the customers are there. We'd just be underfoot. So we waited until nighttime and after the stores closed, and after it was appropriate for me to skateboard up and down the milk aisle. And that was just a disaster waiting to happen. Not only was it making ruts in the floor from those wheels barreling down the floor, but also I wound up not exactly skateboarding with Tony Hawk levels of precision, and I wound up falling into the cheese display. So that I kind of was asking for, but that sure enough happened, and I sure enough wound up never skateboarding in that store again. But the only other one I can think of off the top of my head right now, while I'm actually just sitting here racking my brain trying to think, okay, I gave the premises I was going to make a video about absurd injuries that's happened in my life. What else can I think of that's been stupid? Now, I'm sitting here twisting the cap on and off of my vape trying to remember. But I actually do have one more where I was at work. And this isn't the one where I got hit by the wire. Also, my hair looks ridiculous. This isn't the one where I got hit by the wire and slammed onto the transformer pad and broke my back. This is completely different, completely dumb, completely unrelated. Where I didn't injure myself, but I injured about 60 other people at the same time. And not in a they're bleeding and broken kind of a way, but it was a OSHA violation kind of a way. Where we're working in this mezzanine of an elementary school that we were building. And I was working on something in a corner by an air conditioner, and I'd made a big mess because I'd been drilling into the concrete. And drilling into concrete produces silica dust, which is something that OSHA requires that you protect yourself and people around you from, because breathing in silica dust will give you something called silicosis, which is cause cancer. It makes it very difficult to breathe. Your lungs essentially just become 2 bags of concrete powder because that stuff does not go away. It accumulates in your alveoli and can absolutely kill you. Shortness of breath is often the first symptom of it, but I had a vacuum cleaner and I was going to vacuum up all this dust that was in the way. And it was a vacuum cleaner that was rated to be able to pick up that dust and not shoot it out of it, because it had a filter in it, a Pell rated filter, HEPA filter, that was going to stop the silica dust before it shot out the vacuum. And I went and got this vacuum, and I pointed it out in the hallway so that I would have room to move the vacuum hose around, and I started vacuuming up my work area. There's about 60 other people down that hallway that are working on the plumbing, on the electrical, on the HVAC. They all started coughing immediately as soon as I turned on that vacuum and started sucking up that silica dust. People were yelling, throwing things. Oh my goodness, it's a catastrophe. There's a massacre in here. And I turned off the vacuum and I turned around and looked, and I could barely see down the hallway. There was nobody in sight. It was like there was just suddenly a wall right there. And then the wall started billowing and clearing out, and I realized that I just sprayed everybody down the hallway with a gigantic cloud of silica dust because I didn't bother to look down in the vacuum to see that there's no filter in the vacuum. Somebody had taken the filter completely out of the vacuum, presumably to change it, because you have to change those vacuum filters every so often. There's a requirement for how you're supposed to do that, and I don't remember because I haven't used one of those vacuums in a long time. But they all wound up coming out of that completely gray, the light gray color of a concrete wall. And I was not a very well-liked man after that. for obvious reasons, they started calling me Dusty. And nobody announced that they had caught silicosis from that, but they definitely had ample opportunity, because it seemed like more dust shot up into the air than was on the floor that I was vacuuming it up. I mean, it dispersed that so finely and so evenly and with such force towards every unsuspecting passerby that was standing in the hallway. You'd have thought I was just shooting silica out of a cannon, like something, some kind of horrible, devious weapon of mass destruction. And thankfully, nothing like that has happened again since. That is probably the only serious thing that has happened on a job site while I have been working for this company. Where lots of people wound up being messed up or messed with because of a OSHA violation, vacuuming with silica without a filter. But that definitely made me very conscious of checking the tool that I'm working with before I use it. So, anyhow, I was just going to sit here and try and talk the lunch break away, because I've already eaten my lunch. I ate it about an hour ago because I was starving. And so I'm going to continue to sit here for the next 20 minutes and stare out the window at all the beeping and carrying on going on by people who aren't on lunch break yet. With that being said, my hair and I thank you very much for sitting here listening to me, and y'all have a hilarious day.